Hi, we're doing our 5-minute video series today with Lending One. Neal Shea is joining us today, and let's get into it. Neal, do you want to share with us who Lending One is and what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Gilda, for putting this together. So Lending One is a private lender. We're based out of Boca Raton, Florida. We lend all over the country except for just a small handful of states. Many of those we're actually in the process of getting licensing to do funding in. But being a private lender, we actually have a lot of flexibility. We're not a hard money lender, so I want to make that distinction. Our rates are actually a lot better than hard money lenders. And so the types of loans we do range everywhere from fix and flip loans to single asset rental property loans to portfolio loans, which is when you have 5 or more or several hundred properties batched into one loan. And those can be both non-recourse or 30-year fixed options with full recourse. We also do ground up construction loans on both infill projects as well as larger development projects that do include infrastructure and public improvements. Beyond that, multifamily is also a pretty big sector that we're involved in. We're not doing long-term financing for multifamily, but we are doing bridge financing. So that's great if you have CapEx improvements to make, or just need a refinance out of another short-term bridge loan, or just need to close quickly on a great multifamily purchase.
Wow, it seems like your loans really run the gamut of all the needs an investor might have. How long have you been around? How's Lending One been around?
So Lending One, I believe, has been around for a little over 7 years at this point. It's actually grown leaps and bounds. It started out as just a fix and flip lender. And over the years, it expanded into all these different areas, which I mentioned. Most recently has been that portfolio lending component. So we work with a lot of institutional investors as well as smaller portfolio operators who are really looking to expand their portfolio over time. And so a big component of that is the fixed to rent program, or what a lot of people refer to as the BRRRR method. So we're really positioned in such a way to help people grow their portfolio size of rental properties over time.
So what is the minimum number of units an investor should have before they call you?
So if somebody's looking to do one of those portfolio loans, we need a minimum of 5 properties to start.
And why should I portfolio them versus just having them as one-off loans?
That's a good question. With portfolio, it's typically a couple of different ways. One, a lot of portfolio operators more than likely have owned their portfolio for quite some time. And it's a way to access all the capital at once and grow that portfolio. So if you've got a portfolio size, let's say, of 15 properties, and you're starting to look not just to buy onesie twosies, but another portfolio, you're going to need access to a lot of capital really quickly. So this is a great way to access, up to 75% of that current appraised value of that portfolio and go after other properties, whether they are single units or other portfolios at once. So it gives you access to more capital, and it's a reduction in fees typically.
Okay. Can we talk a little bit about your ground up loans, your new construction loans? What are your minimums and your maximums for that? How fast can you get through approval?
Absolutely. So for new construction, we look at it pretty much on a case-by-case basis. If it's the small, just infill single family house, those can typically go a lot quicker. I would say anywhere from 3 weeks on the low end to 6 weeks on the high end. And that's a really long time for single family. But we can typically finance somewhere in the range of 75 to 80% of costs, depending on the project, up to 70% of ARV. And on those projects, depending on the borrower experience, I've seen rates, starting in the low to mid 7s, depending on that borrower profile and the project itself. But it's really getting access to more of the financing that comes into play with us versus the bank. A lot of times banks are only going to give you about 70-75% on financing. And so we can move a lot quicker on those projects.
Are you financing build to rent?
We are. We're actually launching a whole new build to rent program. And this program is really going to be geared towards some of the larger institutional investors that are building, 40, 50, 100 unit plus communities. So we can do it for them. We can do it for other individuals, that are just planning on doing 1, 2, 3, 5 properties at a time. But I'm glad you mentioned that. This really, this is a part of bridge lending, construction lending. And so if it doesn't matter if somebody were to build a new property or just fix up a current property, that whole build to rent component is really critical, because what we do is we allow you to convert that to a long-term 30-year fixed loan on the back end. And the advantage of doing that with us is we end up waiving the appraisal fees for that second appraisal. We end up discounting the origination fees by about 50% for that second loan. So it behooves the borrower to stick with us and know that they can move it right in to a 30-year fix with only a 3-month seasoning on the bridge loan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like it cut some costs for sure. What else sets you apart from other lenders? Why should we call you?
Well, we're growing rapidly, and I would say our technology platform just really simplifies the whole entire loan process. Our borrowers can log right in, upload everything they need for an application. And then once you're in there, once we have the bulk of your financials, we only need it maybe twice a year if you're doing a lot of loans with us. So, that initial plug-in of data is probably the most cumbersome part of the process. And then when you find the next deal, we just need that contract and the budget, and that's it, and we can move forward. So really speed and ease of transactions. Another thing we're starting to do in our bridge lending is whenever we can, and this really comes into play with fix and flip properties, but whenever we can, we tend to try to do in-house valuations versus subbing out, the third-party appraisal review, because that tends to take a lot more time. So we're really trying to speed up our loan closing process. And just to give you an idea, that on average for our bridge loans for fix and flip, those can close typically on average in about 10 business days. We've closed them quicker before. If it's a mad rush, we can do it, but on average, it's about 10 business days. And for rental properties, we do have to go through a full appraisal process on those. Those are typically on average about 3 weeks.
Okay. Can you give us a cool example of a project you recently funded?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I'd actually like to tell you about one we're getting ready to close on towards the end of next week. We just got through all the approvals on it. And that is going to be a 30-unit townhome development up in Newcastle, Colorado. It's actually 16 townhomes and 14 condos. And it involves public improvements, which get pretty complicated because the builder ends up having to dedicate those public improvements to the town. So we end up having to get a surety bond to guarantee the construction of those improvements. So it's a lot of moving parts in some of those bigger new development deals. So I'm really excited to see Lending One moving in that direction as well, not just for infill projects. So if you've got a larger townhome project that you're looking at, we would love to see it.
Yeah, it takes a more sophisticated lender to understand those for sure.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to share?
I would just say, being in Denver, we are really, the reason why I'm here in Denver and with the company is because we're really trying to get our name out there to lend, not just in Denver, but all over Colorado and the Western states. So if you've got any operations going on in Colorado or the surrounding states, please reach out to me. I personally work with clients all over the country, but as a business development manager, I'm really focused on Colorado and really trying to meet as many builders and fix and flippers and portfolio operators here in the Denver market.
Yeah, and I know you have a ton of experience and you've been a wealth of knowledge with everything I've ever spoken to you about. So it's great to have that resource.
Yeah, Gilda, thank you.
Yeah, I'll drop your info at the end of the video so everyone knows where to find you.
Excellent. Thanks
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Take care.